welcome to The Link. Thank you for joining us. And if you've watched any of the Find the Link series, be it on relationships, parenting, fertility, thank you so much. I hope you have subscribed. Today we're going to be taking a new topic. Join us. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Find the Link Parenting Session 12. It's been 11 amazing weeks with some great speakers, and we've come quite a long way. I'm hoping that we've learned lots of things and we've come away inspired by all our speakers in this last 12 weeks. Today, we're going to be discussing about safeguarding children and young adults, very, very important topic indeed. And one of our speakers today, aside myself, is Dr. Yemisi Adigwe, and she's going to be sharing some highlights about safeguarding children and young adults. It's quite a very important topic, and it's one that we should all be very concerned and passionate about. And I will just be sharing my screen shortly. Like some of you already know, my name is Temitope, the praising child, and this is Find the Link Parenting, and our aim is to empower parents and raise change makers. And this is session 12. As I said before, our topic is safeguarding children and young adults. And the aim of this series, Find the Link, is to enlighten, empower, inspire, and to give. And for those of us that might be aware, there's a group on relationships as well, in which we've had about 10 sessions about relationships and various topics. So briefly, safeguarding children and young adults. All parents hope that their little children grow up to become well-rounded young adults and adults, eventually capable of contributing positively to society. And this hope can be short-lived if the child or the young adult becomes a victim of predatory adults, unstable emotional environments, or of physical or sexual abuse, as this can result in long-lasting damage. So we're here to understand a bit more about safeguarding children and young adults, and also to be part of changing the narrative. The broad forms of abuse that we might be aware of include physical abuse, neglect, emotional abuse, and 7% of that is severe in the UK. There's also sexual abuse, as we might be well aware of. There are some that are not very common, that you might not even have really heard of, but they are parts of what we need to be safeguarding our children and young adults from. And they include modern slavery, trafficking, honor-based violence, forced marriages, especially of underage children. Some of us might be familiar that in some parts of Nigeria, this is quite commonplace. There are also episodes of child sexual exploitation, extrafamilial risk, meaning due to families. And then there's the impact of their peers, and this includes their friendships and their groups. And there could also be exploitation and involvement in serious youth violence, and that would include much older children. Other ones which we might be familiar with right now is bullying, internet abuse, living in a home with domestic abuse. And this might be quite important because we are talking more to a lot of parents and people that have different relationships. And it just shows that this is important, that there's a cordial relationship in a home where our children grow up. And it's also a reason that people in relationships should not stay in a state of abuse, because it's not good for them and it's not good for the children brought up in that environment, and can have long-lasting impacts. Also, some teenagers get involved in intimate relationships with each other, and it can be abusive. It could be involve financial abuse and different kinds of physical abuse, and they are too young to understand what they are getting into at that point, and sometimes they need rescuing. We might have heard of female genital mutilation, which still goes on in some parts of the world, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about this, but parents and society needs to do more about this so that this becomes a thing of the past and is not as commonplace anymore, because there have been instances in which one or both parents or a grandparent is the one trying to engineer this kind of activity, which is a very, very, very wrong and very harmful to young girls. Also, radicalization, very common in the youth, especially when young people feel appreciated, they feel they're doing something that's giving their life a meaning, they could very easily be radicalized. And this is a part in which parents would need to have values in the home and be able to pass that across to their children so that they know what they stand for. Internet abuse, I've decided to pick this separately because we're all on the internet these days. In the past years, the increased use of social networking sites by children, along with its many benefits, has brought an increased vulnerability to grooming and to the misuse of provocative or sexual images, whether self-generated or otherwise. And bullying and child sexual exploitation can be aided by texting, sexting, social networking sites, and other apps. So these are quite grave things, and it just shows that parents have and guardians and teachers have a huge part to play in trying to prevent this kind of abuse. So what can we do? Vigilance, education. We need to be concerned. We need to be passionate. We need to communicate with our children and learn how to communicate better with other adults as well as with our children. We need to emphasize boundaries. Now, the thing is that if a parent doesn't have boundaries, it's very difficult to teach boundaries to a child. Monitor our children, part of vigilance. Modeling and mentoring, very, very important, because more than what we say, our children and young people look at what we do. So I've just kind of given a brief overview. Dr. Yemisi Adigwe is a critical care physician working in the UK, lives with her family in the lovely city of Manchester. She's a great friend, a great soul, very passionate about children. She's worked in sub-Saharan Africa, worked in the United Kingdom in different aspects, as well as in pediatrics. So she comes with a wealth of experience to tell us more about safeguarding children and young adults. And the second person is myself, and I've just spoken. So I'm sure we'll be able to have a lot of healthy interaction on this forum. We're not going to go quite into a lot of gory stories. I'm sure we already have enough at the back of our minds, and different kinds of scenarios might have played out in our minds about what we might be talking about today. But I think what we're going to be doing more is just highlighting what the situation is at the moment, but more especially what we can do to make our children safer. Our children are the rock on which our future will be built and our greatest asset as a nation. So it just means that the issues surrounding safeguarding children and young adults concerns all of us. And so it's not only parents and guardians that have a responsibility, but the whole of society has a responsibility to our children and young adults. And it is a crime to keep silent when we should be talking, especially when it regards protecting the vulnerable in our society, and that includes our children. Okay. So next on Find the Link Parenting, this is the end of the 12 sessions that we had planned, but we're going to have some in-house sessions for the next 4 weeks on the group, and it's going to be on Zoom. Very, very interesting, going to be interactive. We're going to have one-on-one interaction with some very great personalities who are going to be sharing about parenting lessons. You can join the online group to be part of it. Before the end of the sessions, there will be a link so that you can join the group and be part of it. You're welcome. And we still have prayers on the group, and the group should be rounding up at the end of August. So this is a good time to join. We also have a feedback form. If you've enjoyed the sessions, if you think there's something that should be added the next time this is done, if it's going to be done, please fill the form, and that would be much appreciated. Replays will be on YouTube at some point. You can decide to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or send an email. So please keep in touch. Our motto for this series, which we are hoping becomes part of our lives, is that we and the children that we've been given by God as gifts, we would be signs and wonders in the world. That is what we strive about. Okay, so I would just be bringing Dr. Adigwe. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you very much for having me, Timmy.
Okay. So I'll just be leaving the floor for
I'm supposed
you
to share, right?
No, you're welcome. You can do whatever you please right now. I'll just leave the stage for you, so that you can take us through this. Thank you.
So first and foremost, I just want to say thanks again for the opportunity, and bless you, Timmy, for the wonderful work you're doing with this Find the Link series. It's been very robust, and even more so, I mean, this kind of topic just reflects just how robust it is, talking about parenting and even going into this kind of, very important and very sensitive topic. So well done. I hope I'm able to do some justice to it. I will be speaking, so professionally, of course, the healthcare worker has a duty of care regarding safeguarding children, and also as a parent. So I will do a little bit of the professional bit and then talk about what we can do as parents, carers, guardians, and so on and so forth. All right. Can you see my screen?
I can see you on the screen.
Can you see my screen?
I can see you on the screen. No. Okay, let me enable you. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I've just enabled you to share now. So.
Okay.
Should be able to share now. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Yes. We're talking about safeguarding and from a child's perspective. So we're going to discuss it based on, we're just talking about what is safeguarding, why safeguarding, what's the standard, what are the principles, what are the categories of child abuse or the forms of child abuse, what are the roles and responsibilities, or who is involved in safeguarding, and what can we do? And conclusion. So what is child safeguarding? Safeguarding is essentially the action that is taken to promote the welfare of children and protect them from harm. It involves protecting children from abuse and maltreatment, preventing harm to children's health or development, ensuring children grow up with the provision of safe and effective care, taking action to enable all children and young people to have the best outcomes. Now, I want to emphasize something here. You can see that it's a very active thing. You can see it's not passive. It's talking about protecting, preventing, ensuring, taking action. So it's very involving. I'm emphasizing this because I realize that sometimes, even as caring parents, you can be a bit oblivious to the kind of dangers that our children or our wards or our students or our pupils are exposed to. So being loving and caring is not necessarily enough to safeguard. It's an active thing. You have to be conscious of it and you have to do certain things. Okay. So why safeguarding? It has been seen that a substantial minority of children experience severe maltreatment and abuse at home, in school, in the community, from adults, from peers. A report by the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children found that 1 in 5 children have experienced severe maltreatment. Children abused by parents or carers are almost 3 times more likely to also witness family violence. So a child who is already a victim of, physical abuse is probably more likely exposed to even more, emotional and psychological abuse at home or wherever that is happening. Well, these data are, from the UK, but we can extrapolate them. These things are everywhere. 1 in 3 children are sexually abused, but who are sexually abused by adults didn't tell anyone at the time. We know that always happens. I dare say even adults who have been sexually abused do not talk. It's a recent thing, this Me Too movement, where people have started being able to speak, but for a long time people hide it. How much more children who don't even understand so many things and are easily blamed or easily shut up or easily shut down. So a lot of people don't say it. So we don't even know how prevalent it is. I can tell you that many times when people talk, people of our age, a lot of people can go back and tell you what happened when they were children, how a houseboy did this or a house help did that, an auntie and uncle. May not have been something major, but a lot of children have had want some form of exposure or the other to some form of abuse, either sexual, definitely physical, and so on and so forth. All types of abuse and neglect are associated with poorer mental health. Strong associations were found between maltreatment, sexual abuse, physical violence, and poorer emotional well-being, including self-harm and suicidal thoughts. So safeguarding is really important because when children are abused in whatever area or whatever regard, it affects their development, it affects their emotional well-being, it affects their psychological well-being. They don't see themselves the way they really are. They are subject to so many things, self-harm, suicidal thoughts. They're definitely not, how do I put it? They end up not being a positive influence in the environment. They end up, not impacting on the environment. They might even end up killing themselves because of the level of emotional and psychological despair and despondency they feel from whatever form of abuse they've been exposed to. What is the standard? I'm just going to keep it simple. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child stated in 1989 that the convention includes the requirement that children live in a safe environment, they are protected from harm, and have access to the highest attainable standard of health. So it is a requirement. Children must live in a safe environment. They should be protected from harm, and they have access to the highest attainable standard of health. I'm sure we'll wonder, of course, these are things that we all want for our children, but our children, whether we like it or not, whether our children are biological children or children we teach in school or children that we take care of in a daycare or children that we see, as healthcare workers or social workers, that is a requirement for them. And they can't help themselves. So it is up to the adults to enact these things, and ensure that they are safe. What are the 5 key principles? Prevention, paramountcy, partnership, protection, parental responsibility. So these are generally clear. Obviously, you would find that it is better to prevent your child being abused than to have to deal with the aftermath. Paramountcy means that in all things, the child's interest must come first. Whatever happens, the child's interest must come first. If there has to be, a prosecution, if there has to be a change of environment for the child, if the child has to be moved from a harmful environment, you have to think of the child first. A lot of people tend to think of economic reasons, social reasons. For instance, if a child is being abused in a family home, let's say sexual abuse, sometimes there have been many stories where the mother would be aware, but maybe because it's a stepfather or even, heaven forbid, a father, sometimes, they feel they can't move because of they don't want to break up their marriage, or they don't have that financial ability. But the truth of the matter is the child's interest in whatever scenario must be first, and that's paramountcy. Partnership, these things aren't done alone. There are many agencies, it's multidisciplinary. Is that, yeah? So you have, everybody's involved. You have the parents, you have the teachers, you have agencies, government agencies, you have healthcare workers, social workers. So it's not just one person or one group of people. There is a partnership to ensure, that a child is within that safety net and is properly safeguarded. Protection, that's the whole basis of safeguarding. You want to protect the child from any form of harm. Parental responsibility. If there's a parent, it is important for parents to realize that they have first responsibility. Unfortunately, sometimes children are not even safe from their own parents. Thankfully, that's not always the case, but where it is the case, then, other things are done. But if that's not the case, we have to realize that even though you have all these wonderful laws and rules and agencies and legislations and, things here, parental responsibility is paramount. So forms of child abuse, we have different forms, and societal, the IT world, the development of technology and the way things are have brought about new forms of abuse. We're used to things like physical abuse, which would include, physically, beating children, well, in a harmful way, female genital mutilation, things like neglect, emotional abuse, forced marriages. Tammy has mentioned a lot of them, sexual abuse, including child sexual exploitation, missing children, and so on and so forth. Cyberbullying, online cyberbullying, modern slavery, human trafficking, and things like that, are issues that we have. There's a more, There's another slide on that. So physical abuse, child exploitation, bullying, cyberbullying, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, and so on and so forth. I'll just briefly go through them one after the other. Definitely we know what they are, but just to drive them home. So physical abuse, this is deliberately hurting a child, causing injuries such as bruises, broken bones, burns, or cuts. Okay, now I'm going to address the elephant in the room because a lot of us are African, right? And we do believe in not, spare the rod and spoil the child. That is in the scriptures. So I believe it myself, okay? And spanked my children. But I would like to, explain that there is a line that can be easily crossed, even by the best, by the most, even with the best of intentions. There's a line that is easily crossed when a child is beaten with anger or frustration. So I'll take myself as an example. I realized in the past that sometimes when I, spanked my children if they did wrong, I probably will spank them more when I'm more stressed emotionally, when I'm more stressed physically from work. You understand? And I realized that in the end, that's not really that's not trying to teach them what they want. That's what you want them to learn. That's kind of just inflicting your frustrations on them. And some people take it another notch, and some people end up hurting their children, actually having bruises and broken bones. A lot of us probably don't do that, but I can tell you that once that window is there, a lot of people also abuse it. And this is not just parents, teachers, of course, but even parents more, surprisingly. But yes, sometimes a parent who's just angry or who feels, this rod must be heavy upon this child to change this child. Many times you find out that the more you beat many children, the less they respond to you. They don't feel as much pain anymore. They might still go back and do the same thing. So other ways that we can help, we can try and do that is to learn other non-physical ways of, disciplining our children, because there's what I'm trying to show here is that we're going to talk about the horrendous aspects of child abuse, but I also want us to look inwards and see that sometimes unwittingly we might also be perpetrators of this, because when if we're too heavy with the rod, we find that we might even cause some other psychological and mental and emotional issues with the child. So it's important for us to learn to discipline with love. Like I said, I'm not saying that, oh, you can't spank a child. Oh, no, sometimes they need it. But you have to be able to differentiate between when you're really angry or when you just want to correct. And if you're able to balance talking to the child and explaining, this is why this is happening, I'm going to give you, spank you this way, or I'm going to deprive you of this and that because of this. I love you, but this is why I'm doing this. And then you can talk about it later. Perhaps you might be able to, get what you want better out of that child without getting into physical abuse. Of course, if the physical abuse is from somewhere else, like school or whatever it is, you have to recognize if it's allowed in a school for them to spank. I don't know if that still happens even in Lagos, in Nigeria, but I know that started, fading out. But if it's still there, of course, they can spank your child for doing something naughty. But if that child gets any injuries or anything, that should be escalated, because that has gone beyond correction. It is abuse. Well, the next one is child sexual exploitation. It's a type of sexual abuse. Children are in certain situations of relationships where they receive gifts or money or affection as a result of performing sexual activities, or others performing sexual activities on them. There are many, many examples. We're not going to go into gory details, because I'm sure everyone has one terrible example or the other of things like that. But this is one very good example. I even saw incidentally, I had seen it before, but it just popped up again on my browser recently, and I saw a 22-year-old nanny. Who would believe that, who exploited an 11-year-old boy, and she got pregnant for him, and unbelievably still told the boy she was pregnant for him. I don't know how the guy was able to even process that kind of information. And she lived in the house. So this is a big, big flag for every parent. These things can happen under our noses if we are not vigilant, if we do not realize that the dangers are there. And usually it is people that our children trust. So don't get it twisted and think, oh, that guy with, who looks really mean on the street, I'm going to avoid, make my, I'm going to make sure my child avoid. No, it can be a nice uncle who is really nice, or a nice nanny. In this case, a 22-year-old lady who exploited an 11-year-old. And that child was 3 years old before the boy was, got the courage to confess to his mom. So we have to be conscious that these are windows through which children can be, abused. Neglect. Neglect is the ongoing failure to meet a child's basic needs and is the most common form of abuse. A child may be left hungry or dirty without adequate clothing, shelter, supervision, medical or healthcare. They may be put in danger or not protected from physical or emotional harm. They may not get the love, care, and attention they need from their parents. I'm sure a lot of us will do this and say, oh no, I don't neglect my children. I'm sure a lot of us do not, but I'm sure we've also heard stories. So let's go from the obvious stereotype of maybe a poor drug addicted mother who's not able to care for her child, or an alcoholic father. Let's look at even a rich man, you understand, who is too busy traveling to Paris, traveling to Sweden, on business, or the parents, they're jetting here and there. The mother is always going to societal parties. The child also, is being neglected, perhaps emotionally and psychologically, may have all that he or she needs, but may still be neglected. So neglect is a form of child abuse, and we have to be conscious that it is possible for actually parents to even unwittingly neglect our children, because of course the basic needs are food, shelter, and clothing, but it is still possible to provide all of that and still not meet our child's emotional and psychological needs. So we have to really be careful. And another example is, I know somebody who, she's a busy doctor, her husband is also busy. They employed a nanny, pay this nanny a large amount of money, real good money. She's an elderly woman, and they just felt that the children will be taken care of in a proper, African way, and she didn't realize that things weren't going the way she thought until one day when she happened to be home and took her son to school and noticed that, his mouth was smelling really bad, took him back home, brushed his teeth, was really angry with the nanny, took the son back to school. The son was upset. In school, they asked him what the problem was. He said his mom was shouting at the nanny. He totally misinterpreted things that happened and, kind of projected his mom like, a very angry person. But apparently they had been flagging off the mother as a negligent mother because the children were coming in with, dirty clothes, unbrushed teeth. They didn't realize that she was a doctor going about her business and she had a nanny. She was paying loads of money to take care of the child. Even though she personally did not intend to be neglectful, and if she had been there, she didn't think she was being, that was not the plan, but that's how she was projected. Those children were taken away from her for a while. She had to change her career. She had to change her specialty to have more time for the children. It was a big issue. She was put on a database. It was terrible. So what I'm just trying to say is that neglect can actually happen if you also outsource taking care of your children and you think that they're in good hands, but you don't have a handle on what is happening with them, even though that was not your original intention. Things like online abuse. So any type of abuse that happens on the web, whether through social networks, playing online games and using mobile phones. Now, this is the new thing of this age, okay? Because everybody has, a phone, everybody has a tab, data is cheap and things like that. And there is, just something as simple as the kids are on a WhatsApp group. Okay, I'm sure a lot of us have watched all these American movies where there's one nerd in class, anytime he gets to school, they bully him. In the canteen, nobody wants to sit with him, or it's the nerds that sit together. Imagine now you have your phone, you have data 24 hours, and there's WhatsApp. So the bullying follows the child home. You understand? So all the people who, say nasty things in school can say it right on his device at home, and that's just even the simplest form. There are other things, some people get into, without, supervision and all of that, they get into the wrong use of social media. Maybe unfortunately, somebody sends a nude picture because they're trying to experiment, and somebody sends that all around the school. You have people who've committed suicide because they were being laughed at, their pictures were being sent around, or they are constantly bullied. These are things to be watchful for. As parents, you just feel that you're making your child happy by buying them the latest this or that, the latest devices. Oh, my child has an iPhone 12, has this tab and all of that. That's all well and good, but it must be regulated because children just, can I just say this very simply? They don't have the same kind of brain that you do. You are older, you are more mature, you're more experienced. You need to give them guidance. They can't handle that kind of freedom. Even if they were naturally good, things can go wrong online. Emotional abuse. Now, this emotional abuse is something I want, to really talk about, is the ongoing emotional maltreatment of a child. It's sometimes called psychological abuse, and can seriously damage a child's emotional health and development. This can happen anywhere. It can happen in school. It can happen on the playground. It can happen on the football field. Somebody feels, maybe he's not playing so well, and, the kids make him feel bad, but it can also happen at home. It can also happen with you, with me, with the best of intentions, that good, mother, you want the best for your child. I don't know why you're like this. Is something wrong with your head? The person who got first, does she have two heads? Why do you always get this thing? Why don't you get this thing right? Why can't you do this? And this is something that comes a bit more naturally. I hope I'm not being biased. I want to say it comes a bit more naturally to the African parent. And I'm not even praising the Western parent, because sometimes when you let your child go too far, just too loose, you don't control them in any way. So there's always a balance, and this balance can be struck wherever you are in the world. But emotional abuse is very, very real. And I will give myself as an example. I have two daughters, and they're different. They have, different strengths. So sometimes when one of them has strengths in one thing, I find myself struggling not to keep saying, but why can't you do it like one, because that also causes emotional issues. And that's the truth. I bless God that I'm able to talk with them. So sometimes we talk and one says, yeah, but you're always saying this and it makes me look like, and I apologize. So you can actually inflict emotional abuse on your child because you're trying to make them better, or you're frustrated that they have a particular habit. So that's why I liked this picture, because this is like a mom scolding the child. It doesn't mean you can't scold them, but don't make them feel less than they are. My son has a way of saying, maybe if he spills something on the floor, I don't know whether he's watching too much cartoons and just feeling too cute, he will say something like, I always spoil things, or I made a mess. I always make a mess. I say, no, you don't always make a mess. Okay. Even though I'm angry, but you see, when he says that, I just go back, you don't always make a mess. There's nothing wrong with you. You are an absolutely wonderful boy. Everybody makes mistakes. So you have to consciously affirm your children. Nobody can do that for you as well as you can. So you have to avoid the temptation of because you're trying to make them better. And that's one thing that the African parents wants to do. We want to, cause our children to be the best and do, the best. Please, emotional abuse is real and can be anywhere, but it can be in your living room. Child trafficking, children are trafficked for child sexual exploitation, benefit fraud, forced marriages, and all of that. I know this sounds really like bizarre and everybody's like, gosh, but I'm going to address one common thing in our society, which is where we have young house helps. Okay, now, so, it's a gray area. In certain parts of the world, having a house help that is 8 or 9 or 10 or 14 or 15 or less than 18 will be seen as, totally a no-no. But in our society, we might say, well, the people need the money. If they don't send the children won't go to school anyway, things like that. So why not help? Well, I'm not going to talk about, I'm not going to say whether that should be or should not be. But what I'm going to say is what I have personally observed, what all of us would have observed. Many times these children are not taken care of well at all. They are emotionally, physically abused. The children are neglected. They don't wear good clothes. They are beaten. They are making to do work that adults will do and get tired, and I'm not talking of bad, wicked people. I'm talking of people that we go to work with, we see in church, just normal people. Because some people just have it in their head that if it's a house help, then, the treatment is different. I'm not saying that if your children go to the most expensive school in the country, then you should send the house help to the most expensive school. No. But I'm just saying that we have a responsibility to safeguard any child in our care, because that child is helpless. And assuming for something happens and there's a war in the country and families are separated and you have refugees in different parts of the world. If you want to think, how would you like your child to be treated? So even if that child has not experienced anything much before, you say they don't know anything. She doesn't, she definitely doesn't need this or need that. That's fine. But we have to be conscious that we should not also be perpetrators of child trafficking as child trafficking. Worst case, you can say, I'm her guardian. She's here or he's here to render some help if that is the arrangement, but let that child be the better for it for being in your care. That's just what I'm going to say about that. Many of these things, the other ways these things can be applicable to us, because I'm conscious of the kind of audience. I know we hardly will have anybody who would take their child for, sexual exploitation or things like that. But it's important to know that there are predators who can, who will. People are still being kidnapped. Things are still happening. So we need to be careful and just watch out for them. All right. Harmful sexual behavior. This is, kind of similar to sexual exploitation. And what I'm just going to say about this is sometimes we find that we unconsciously groom our children to become sexual. And I'll give 2 examples. I remember, so I'm a Christian. The kind of things I watch, the kind of things I read are streamlined, and I get my children know that as well. And there are things we don't watch at all at home. But let's not even go in that direction. Let's say that, why don't you wait for your children to grow old enough to decide what they want to do, but don't expose them at a very young age. I've been to a friend's house and they were playing a music video, a music channel. In fact, I'm not sure if it's nudity or pornography. It was so terrible. And there were young children there. As in myself, even me as an adult, I couldn't look at the TV because I was so scandalized. And my kids just, turned their head in one direction. And I was just wondering, we managed to escape from the parlor where the thing was being watched. But I was just thinking of the young children who were watching that, sexual behavior. These were 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. It will become natural to them. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So we're talking about the dangers, all right, safeguarding our children, but it starts from what we also feed them with. It starts from how we groom them and train them to know what is right and what is wrong. You can't say, they will learn it anyway. Why don't you guide the way they learn it? Do you understand? Why don't you dictate how they learn it, in the right way, so they don't just learn it the wrong way? Another example was when when you go to children's parties and they're dancing songs that are talking about sex, and people are just moving their bodies up and down, and you will see parents applauding the children, and the children are moving in highly sexual mode. And then you can imagine that child is going to have a low threshold for thinking that somebody making advances to him or her is harmful, because everything has been glorified. Do you understand? So harmful sexual behavior is a real thing. People, they can be predisposed to it by their mates or other adults and things like that. But I just wanted to add that we need to be careful what they see as normal, or otherwise they won't see it as harmful and they can be more easily victims. Grooming. This is when somebody builds an emotional connection with a child to gain their trust for the purposes of sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, or trafficking. It is still, trying to be careful who your children are exposed to, careful who they're exposed to physically, who they're exposed to online, and so on and so forth. Tammy, sorry, how much more do I have?
Go on. You're all right.
Okay. All right. So these are just examples. We've run through some of them. Physical abuse. There's some bizarre things here like drowning, poisoning, suffocating, hitting a child, burning or scalding, throwing. So we don't do, a lot of people won't do many of these. Most of them will be done by people who are mentally, who have mental health issues, but like I said, the simple ones that we might tend to normalize, like spanking or beating, if we do it with anger, without focusing on the corrective nature of what we're trying to achieve, we might also end up abusing our children. So we should be careful with that. But then you also identify if that is being done to your child in other places, that has to be instantly escalated. It doesn't matter whether it is a grandfather-in-law that you have to respect and everything. If you notice that your child is being abused in whatever way, then you know what it is. You see it for what it is. You don't try and sugarcoat it. This is abuse, and I'm going to get my child out of it, or I'm going to escalate it as applicable. Emotional abuse, serious bullying, exploitation or corruption, conveying to a child that they are worthless, unloved, or inadequate or valued. Oh, this is very heartbreaking, and many children don't know how to handle this. Many times when you see a child who seems difficult, who seems aggressive, belligerent, difficult to handle, sometimes they're dealing with a sense of worthlessness and not being loved. And that could happen in a child who's come from, maybe a broken home, maybe has a wicked stepmother or father. That still happens. Or even one's parents maybe feeling disappointed with the child because the child isn't what we want them to be. This can be very debilitating for a child. Imposing expectations that are inappropriate to the development of the child. I remember when I was growing up, I went to a very competitive secondary school, and we used to, getting A's was not the issue, it was getting all A1s, So I remember I went home one day and I said, mommy, oh God, I think I got a C, and I think I got 7 A's and 1 C or something like that. And people were getting all A1s, so it was as if I didn't do so well. I remember what my mom said. My mom said, don't worry, because I told her about one particular person. She said that one has excess gray matter. More like she just said something to make me feel better about myself. But my mom has always been a driver for me. When I did my exams, she would stay in the parlor until I finished reading. When I was doing SSCE, she would, when I finished, then she would go to bed even if it's 3 a.m. So she wasn't like a non-achiever or trying to groom me to be a non-achiever. But at the point where she saw I was down, she just told me that one has excess gray matter. I don't even know how she got that, but that made me feel like, okay, maybe she's just different, but it doesn't make me any less wonderful that, I am to my mom. So it's really important that we don't impose expectations that are inappropriate. Some children, to be honest, may not be as sharp as others. Identify your child, do the best you can do for them, but don't put a burden on them and make them feel like a failure. That's very important. Sexual abuse, we've talked about that. Neglect, we've also talked about that. It's important to note in societies like in the Western world, if you miss medical appointments and things like that, it's taken as neglect. So as applicable, not just being concerned about food, shelter, and clothing, you have to be concerned about everything about your child and make sure that, to the best of your knowledge, every area is taken care of, right? So where does abuse happen? Home, I've given many down-to-earth examples to show you how it could actually happen, even without you intending for it to. School, definitely school, lots of bullying, a lot of sexual issues, happen there as well. There's a poor child in Abuja who recently died, God bless her soul. And, anyway, it's a very gory story, but we know these things happen. So the neighborhood, that brother that is always smiling, he's always coming to my shop and buying things. Then I'll send my daughter, things like that. Things happen in the neighborhood. People who live in anywhere, it doesn't really matter where, whether it's high profile, low profile, abuse can happen online, anywhere. And who should safeguard? Parents and guardians, of course. We have the first responsibility. Carers, teachers, health workers, social workers, the police, the community, the government, international agencies. Now, bringing it home. So it's our responsibility as parents, as carers, as employers. I put that employers there because you might have, it depends on the setting, it depends on the country, but you might have an apprentice who is 16-year-old working with you. You might have, a house help who is younger and all of that, a house help in quote, who actually should just be treated as a child, embrace, you have to embrace the physical, mental, emotional, psychological, and sexual well-being of the children in our care. It's our duty of care as adults, as anybody involved in taking care of children, whether in your home, whether in the daycare, whether in school, whether at your workplace. It's your duty of care to recognize signs of abuse and do something about it where appropriate to protect the minor. I'm always talking about bringing it home. So even when you find the abuse is coming from you, even with your best intentions, you can turn around and change it. For instance, like I said, if it's emotional abuse, you can go back to your child and apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I validate you. Say good things about the child. This is very, very important. How much more when it is, something else, like you notice that a child is being neglected, and so on and so forth. So these are a bit different in different societies. So like in the UK, if anybody notices anything, they can just report, and they see it as their duty. In Africa, it's been like, what's their own business, And to be honest, there's a fine line between just being a busybody, honestly, and trying to get someone into trouble, but at the same time, doing what is right for a child. So I'm very happy that in recent times, there have been videos where you have, people who are beating a house help or one poor cousin that lives with them. Even in Nigeria, the videos, went all over social media, and with time, at least in two instances, I think the perpetrators were brought to book, because people have started realizing that, look, we all have a responsibility. So if you see someone really being abused, or as a class teacher, you see somebody, today she doesn't bring lunch. She could have forgotten, but then every day she doesn't bring lunch. You might want to escalate gently, maybe first, speak with the head teacher, maybe contact the parents and see how in the context of the environment those people can be helped. And if you think that it is, willful neglect or abuse or from addiction or whatever it is, there are also agencies that you might need to escalate to help, the parents and, get those children, out of that environment for the period where, the abuse is prevalent. We have an obligation to ensure that no child is abused under our care, whether it's a son, a daughter, a shop girl, a house help, whatever it is. How can we safeguard children in our care? Listen to them. There have been many stories about people who I know some, I personally heard somebody who said, and she was a head teacher, she said she was abused by her lesson teacher for many months, and she kept telling her parents she didn't want to do lesson, and they would say she's a lazy girl. She couldn't tell them what it was. So this, when I say listen, I mean try and listen to what is being said and what is not being said. Try and be sensitive to your child. Be vigilant. This one will be vigilant. We have discussed this today, and I'm sure none of us is new to the fact that these things happen. So I don't think I've said anything totally new. So based on that, you have to be vigilant. I will give an example. When I was a doctor in a general hospital, in a pediatric clinic, I saw so many bizarre things that it made me and my husband extra vigilant. We didn't just, there was nothing like my girls would sit on an uncle's lap, or because of the things we had heard, we were just extra vigilant. And we didn't let things go. So we wouldn't just let our children be, anywhere. I remember when I got a lesson teacher, I got him through somebody who was like an agent who used to get me teachers, and I insisted I wanted ladies. Now, that doesn't mean anything in this day and age, but well, you can still try. So I insisted I wanted ladies, but after some time, I think we needed another teacher, and he got a man. So I sat them down and I said, look, I know that you probably have no negative intentions. What I would just like you to do for me is not give me the impression that you have negative intentions. And what I meant was, I don't want any stories that touch. Not that, the girl would tell me you were trying to grab her, but you will say you were trying to remove something in her ear. I don't want that kind of story. So I was able to voice that out, have that discussion in the nicest possible way, and he appreciated it. So I gave him that benefit of, look, I know that there's no whatever, but let's not be confused about it, because I had heard something in my children's school then that one teacher was expelled. He was saying he didn't do this. That one was saying, so I didn't want any of that. But I didn't just do that. I made sure that when they had their lessons, very inconvenient because we had a private room they could have gone, they would have it in the middle of the parlor. And if I was not around, I would tell the nanny to make sure that she was there, just to make sure that these children are properly safeguarded. The person may not have had any intentions, but should he have mistakenly had, we would try and be vigilant. Be approachable. Let them know they can trust you with silly questions, comments, observations, or admissions. The reason why I said this is that if they can come to you with other things, if someone comes and says, "Mommy, why is it wrong to have a boyfriend in primary four?" You say, my God, these children are spoiled. What kind of, don't you go to church? They won't come and tell you when uncle is calling them and saying, hey, in the backyard, because they will say, "Mommy will shout." Do you understand what I'm saying? So be approachable. You people should talk normal talk. I remember I had to have the discussion. In fact, it was such a stressful time for me because they were just 8, but they had started giving me whispers that they were hearing some things in school. So, man, I had to bite the bullet and talk about it. I remember they were just like, Jesus. It sounded so gory to them when I was talking about, sex to them. But I had to tell them so they don't hear from outside and hear the pirated version. You understand? Let them hear the proper version, how it is meant to be. It is not bad, but it is bad in these circumstances. And so it demystifies it and makes it less, and then teach them. Don't assume they know or that they will know somehow. Teach them. I was privileged when my children were really young to have somebody come to the church I was attending. Tell for your benefit, was Pastor Iswa's church. We had somebody called Praise who were coming. He's into, let's just say child safeguarding, but he does it, generally, and he's also a pastor. And he spoke certain things, and he was so emphatic. I never forgot. And though my children were really young then, I started to teach them what to do if anybody, and sorry, I know that a lot of this, we've touched all the different aspects, but some of these examples are maybe talking about more sexual because many times they're hidden and you don't know. So this is how I approached it. I remember when I would be showering them, I'll tell them, if anybody touches you, and I'll show them where, what do you say? We had a song or we had a refrain. Stop it, stop it. I'll tell my mom, I'll tell my daddy, and run away. Now, these things are not 100% foolproof, but already it has set alarm bells in your children's head, what is right and what is wrong, so that when a predator comes, because like I said, the predators don't come with fangs, they don't come with horns. They are people the children know and trust, but their mother has already told them, their father has already told them this, so they know it's not, so they will probably be uncomfortable, uncooperative at best. Even they may not be able to beat off auntie and uncle, but once auntie and uncle start hearing them say those kind of things, they know that these ones are not candidates for secret runs, that kind of thing. Avoid judgmental responses. I've explained that. Set standards so there's less risk of making an exception for a predator. There are people I can trust with my life that I know that they can never be predators as much as a human being can trust another human being. But even though I trust them, okay, like for my child, I won't let them bath them just so that, for a daughter, just so that another person, they don't get used to, the opposite, an uncle is showering an auntie. This was when they were younger and it could have been done, just so that they don't fall into the hands of the wrong people. Anyway, so set standards so there's less risk of making an exception for a predator. Be careful whom you trust. We cannot overemphasize that, predators, whether emotional, whether psychological, whether sexual, whatever it is, they're usually people they trust or they associate with regularly. Escalate concerns where you suspect a bad influence and take action. If somebody starts saying something, if your child starts just talking somehow about somebody or complaining in school, even about bullying, remember we said that many of these forms of abuse generally culminate in really bad mental health for the child and just sends the child on a trajectory, that affects the child's life, future, destiny, and all of that. So you want to attack anything that's happening quickly. There's nothing like, is one uncle, in our society, you cannot know. If you feel that your child is being abused, be it physical, be it emotional, be it psychological, whatever it is, you have to escalate it. If it's in school, if it's a teacher, you understand, if it's a teacher that is, you feel that teacher is beating your child too much, we're not talking of normal discipline, maybe your child too has issues, we're talking of, that this has gone beyond, you talk about it, and many times when you raise these issues, oftentimes it curbs the tide when you start early or when you recognize it early. Guard their hearts, guard what they watch, what they read, who they make friends with. Easier if started early. It's difficult to be correcting a teenager, but when you start early, they are less exposed to things that can, for instance, online issues. So we talk about cyberbullying, but there are lots of online things you can watch, and you have children committing suicide because they're groomed to do it online, things like that. Now, be careful what they watch. Don't be oblivious to it. Don't just control their screen time. Who they make friends with, talk to them, know them. I remember my mom made it a point of duty of knowing my friends' mothers, and I try to do that now, and there are certain friends, especially here in the UK, there are certain friends, you hear different things and you're like, this and that, but we're talking about it and I'm telling them, so I'm not saying don't be friends with this person, but I'm not comfortable with this person's beliefs, and it is easier for bad to influence good. So I need you to avoid. So you need to be conscious of who they're friends with, of what they're watching, of what they're doing. Learn from others' experiences and work to prevent them. So stories that touch, you understand? I'm sure all of us, we've heard one story or the other. How is one driver or one this or one that? There was a boy who was kidnapped. It was unfortunately, his father's brother. So when you hear all these stories, don't just wait for it to happen to you. Take all the right precautions that you can. Okay, seek proper rehabilitation where necessary, where there has been, for instance, a lot of bullying, and the child, sometimes maybe the child doesn't want to go to school, the child feels really bad, rehabilitate yourself as you can. If, for me as a Christian parent, I will open the scriptures, I will prompt the child with what God says he or she is, if it is appropriate to have social rehabilitation, please go ahead and do it. And pray. Okay, there's something else I want to say. Escalate matters of abuse witness to relevant authorities. Do not cover up. In our society, when I was in that children's clinic, I saw many cases where, in the end, everybody will say, let's just cover it up. It's family. That will continue to cause these things to perpetrate. Let's not cover up. And pray. Everything I've said is what we can do. There are many people who have done all of this and abuse still happens in one way or the other. Pray for your children. That's what I do. So in conclusion, it's a child's right to be protected. It's our duty to provide this. It's everybody's responsibility. You have to know the appropriate agencies to report to where appropriate. Sometimes it's just, even if you notice something in church, you may not need to go to child protection, whatever, but if you can approach the parent, or you can get one of the leaders or whatever it is, but know the appropriate people that you can escalate something to, should that be necessary. Look inwards, okay? Look inwards at yourself. Am I doing anything that is constituting abuse to my child, to my ward, to my pupils, to my students, to my employee, so on and so forth. Thank you very much. These are my references.
That was very, very detailed, to say the least. So that's been really great. And I'm happy you had enough time to cover that. That's really great. So I think I saw a hand raised up at some point. We'll pick your hand very soon, Ibis. Thank you for your question. But there were a lot of things that struck me. Some of them, even with the examples, when you talked about outsourcing your responsibility. So in an age where parents are so busy, and cost of living, cost of inflation, all of that, I think it makes a difference when sometimes parents make tough choices and decide, I think I need to monitor my child more. I think this is more important than this extra money I'm getting for spending this extra 4 hours at work. I think it's very, very important. And I remember being very upset with one of my friends that said her house girl was birthing her son. I think her son was like 2 or 3 at the time. And I said, really? And what will you be doing? And I said, I'm your only son in the morning. As in, I was so upset with that. Why will you let your house help birth the child? Why? As in, I was trying to say, have you not thought that anything can happen? He's a boy, he's vulnerable, as in, it's a very intimate moment and you have the opportunity to do it yourself. Why would you even let that happen?
Yeah.
So I think it was after speaking to her, she said, oh, okay, she will try and start bathing him. And especially at a stage where sometimes children can't talk, you need to be very careful. I remember some incidences which were like close shaves when I was a child. Some of them I never told my parents about it till almost 3 decades later. And I have listened to a lot of people, and I realized it is so commonplace. The other thing is that some people think boys are immune, and it's not true, not at all. So boys need protection, girls need protection, equal protection. We need to be really conscious of this. The other thing is about the tablets. So people, well, I'm a Christian, no apologies, but I see people in church, they just hand the tablet to the child. And I remember when I used to go to church with my parents, and if they are praying in tongues, they are praying in tongues. If they are lifting hands, they are looking at you, you two are lifting hands. What are you going to be pressing? You cannot afford to be pressing anything. You have to be completely involved in this service. So when I always go to a church and I see a child with a tablet and looking very distracted, and the parents are worshiping God, in my mind, I just think, well, I don't know what to say. Then you mentioned about unconscious grooming, and it did bring an example to mind, because I know someone, I think I visited their home, and most of their children are female, and they were playing something on the television as well. And the girls were replicating the dance that was on the television. It's a Christian family. And in my mind, I was saying, why? As in, have they not thought of the long-term effect of this, that this is not particularly okay? And if the children get used to it, they will think it's normal. And then sometimes in Africa, sometimes there's a lot of slang, there's a lot of innuendo. Sometimes you cannot prevent yourself hearing it, but it's important to discuss it and decide whether, is this something I want to be saying? Is this something royalty is supposed to be saying? That kind of thing. And sometimes you hear people say it in whispers, and you already know what they are saying. So you say, well, what are you whispering about? Especially in these climes. So people are using the F word, people are using all kinds, and then they are saying it in whispers, and you know what they are saying. You say, and they say it at work, as in it's so commonplace. And you hear people in church using sexy, like, and you think, is this one a biblical word, or is my version outdated? Is it in the message? Is it, as in, it's not anywhere. That's just it. It's not anywhere. So maybe I'm pushing it. Okay, about neglect. The issue about drug cupboards. I just wanted to mention that it's a very, very little thing, but it's very important that part of protecting our children is that we keep the bleach, we keep the things that can harm children in a cupboard with a key, and we lock the cupboard and keep the key in a safe place, high above where the child can touch it. Because Yemisi, I tell you a lot about stories that touch, but this is one of the stories that touch that can be preventable, in which a child carries bleach and drinks it, or it was in another bottle, and that kind of story. So anything that is poisonous, harmful around a child that is very inquisitive, or can mistakenly carry the bottle and try and taste it, one has to be very careful. In the developed world where I live, in the UK, children under 13 are not left by themselves at home. And that is with good reason to their minds, because they feel that at that age, they are not capable of managing by themselves at home. And we realize that, not as if we should set age limits where in our continent, but it's just something to keep in mind, that if anything happened, will this child be able to be safe by themselves? Or have you taught them to the extent that if something happens, they know how to step out of the house, they know how to get an escape route, things like that? If you completely educated your children about that, that is good. But these are things to keep in mind. We might have heard of stories in which a child was trapped somewhere, didn't know what to do, or things like that. So these are just things that we need to be careful of. As in, these are harmless things that can happen. These are not even things that are intentional or planned. Just being careful. The other thing is about separate rooms. We sometimes hear people have 7, 10 children in the UK. If they are all different, if you have 2 children of a different gender, they would give you a bigger house with separate rooms, because they believe male children and female children should be in separate rooms. And I remember my father being very strict about, why are you in the same room till like 11 o'clock, even though he's your brother? And I know it is because he has not been very explicit about it, but there have been an incident in which he knew that there was incest in a family. So he's very, very conscious about, same thing, he's very conscious about, why should you be around in your boxers? Why should you be walking around in a wrapper? That kind of thing. And it seemed like overboard at that time, but it's, in a way, it is safeguarding. In an age where people are putting, I'm calling it cortical, but it's nail varnish on people, the fingers of 2-year-olds, and putting lipstick and wearing skimpy things for them. I don't know what you're trying to get at. It should allow them to grow to a point where they decide that this is okay dressing for them. What else did I want to talk about? I think that's all for now, but I think we have a few hands raised. I think, let me let Ibi speak, Ebes, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Ebes, I think you wanted to speak. You can unmute yourself and speak, please. Followed by my Auntie Shola.
Sorry, I didn't want to speak.
Okay.
I wanted to clap, then I mistakenly raised
your hand. Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay. So I have Auntie Shola's hand. Auntie Shola, you can unmute your microphone and speak, please. That's Dr. Ephraim.
Okay, thank you, Temi. Thank you, Temi, and thank you, Dr. Yemisi. That was a very good talk. I'm sorry I joined a little late, but I just want to validate again practically everything that you said. The other thing that I noticed, and I don't know if you said that before I came on, is even children's television itself. Because something is on children's television doesn't mean that it's appropriate. There are some children's channels that show inappropriate behavior, that can be dangerous to the children. Because when you see programs where children are holding daggers and fighting daggers against one another, and you then have a station whereby you have a situation whereby children are watching that, they might go and practice it. They might just go and practice it. And it's very, very, it can be very dangerous. Or where children are watching programs where someone is jumping from the 10th floor and is being Superman and so on. We have to be very careful, even sometimes with children's TV, because these things can cause physical danger. You need to let them know that they cannot replicate everything they see on TV just because it's on TV. So I just wanted to add that. I don't know if it had been mentioned before. And sometimes also rude talking. You just find some children talk to one and they bully one another. You find it's a children's program. Yeah, there's a bully, and that bully is the one being glorified there. Things like that we have to, watch out, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Of course, this means that a parent would need to watch I know there was a parent on the group that was saying she watches something before she allows her child to watch it with her. So she like pre-watches. Is it like an overkill? But sometimes it's really necessary.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know sometimes with older children, you hear the parents say, they've been on their tablet all day. It's okay to be on your tablet for some time, but what were they doing on their tablets? So it's very good to be inquisitive every now and then. A child that is on the tablet keeps the door locked for the next 12 hours. You should be alarmed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. With my kids, I've not watched everything, but I try to vet it. Some people, like you said, may think it's an overkill, but I don't, because we're not always around. But I think my kids know that there are some things they can't watch. Even my little son, who's short of 6, like Dr. Luanuga said, there are certain cartoons that I have noted just don't look positive. So he knows. So when it's on, he'll like, mommy, he'll be like, mommy, this is on. Can you change it? And he'll get someone to change it because we started really early. So he knows. And my girls would say, we go through a set of kind of programs or series that I feel that, it's safe for them to watch, and generally safe because, of certain content that children should not be watching. It's not a matter of controlling them too much. It's just content that is inappropriate for a certain age. And that's what they watch. And if that's not on, or if they finish watching it, then they wait till we vet again. But they know that I'm all for them watching or being entertained appropriately. So if there's a new movie and I see that it's family friendly, I'll be the first to say, let's do a movie night. So they know I'm not against them watching TV. And sometimes when they feel restricted, I go back and tell them, see, especially because I'm coming from a Christian context. I say, you remember the Bible says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. I and your dad, we don't watch these things, even though we're much older and we probably can handle it better. But that's because that is our choice as Christians. So that's what we're just trying to streamline. And they understand it because it's not legislated with a hard hand, but that is the tradition of the home. And I mean, I recommend that you might take a different approach, but definitely don't just be careless about what they watch. Have an idea. Even like Dr. Oluwanuga said, many cartoons are not as innocent as they look.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. That's so important. So important. So she's spoken about the rights of a child in one of the slides to keep them safe, protected from harm, with access to the highest attainable standards of health. I think Ebis had asked the question about why can you not send a child to the same expensive school? Is the child not in your house? Why the discrimination? I don't know whether you want to answer that as a question.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I think if you understood the spirit of what I said, I was very against treating a child in your care as just a house help. I think for me, that was the main thing I was trying to talk about. I was actually against discrimination of that child. But I was also trying to be realistic to say that, number one, I did say that it might be some people's cup of tea. It's not everybody's cup of tea to get an underage child to help. Okay. I did emphasize that in certain environments, that will be seen as wrong. So in the first place, possibly should not happen. But should it happen because, it's an informal arrangement, you're trying to help the family, then make sure that that child is treated well and like a child. Now, if you want to be realistic, assuming somebody in Lagos, someone is going to Corona that costs 1 million, or I don't know how many millions now, obviously it's much more than 1 million. I don't know if you can afford to send another child. If you can, by all means, it's very possible realistically that maybe a child that someone brought from the north may not be able to cope in that environment because the person hasn't been groomed, to that point, and that kind of education may be lost, because the child hasn't been groomed to that point. So but put the child in a good school, let the child go to school, let the child not be at home. And that is if that is your cup of tea. In my underlying bent would be probably don't even get an underage child in the first place, but understanding that our environment can be a bit different and you might actually be helping the parents make sure that that child is well taken care of, well educated, has good health, has access to good healthcare services. It is up to whoever, if you can afford to send to the same kind of school, that's entirely up to you. I probably wouldn't get someone that young, so I won't even go into that kind of argument. But I'm hoping that what the underlying principle I was trying to emphasize is understood.
Yes, thank you very much. I think we have 2 hands raised now. Layo, you may speak first, followed by Evius. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Adigwe, for this lovely, very, very, very enlightening presentation.
Hey, Lion, lovely to hear from you.
Yeah, same here. Okay, so there's 2 aspects. I stepped out briefly, so I'm not sure if these were mentioned at all. But I would say this, especially with people that live in the Western world, 2 things we need to safeguard our children against, in addition to all that Yemisi and the other speakers have said. 1, the issue of LGBTQI, RST, whatever, wherever it ends. Because in those environments, or in the UK, I would say, and in America, they've really encouraged children to believe that it's okay to be gay, it's okay, it's just the way you're made, and all of that. And our very, very inquisitive children want to know, is it okay? Please, let's not shy away from letting them know the truth. The truth is God says man, woman, not 2 men and not 2 women. I'm saying this because there was a time my son in school in the UK came home. He was in he must have been in year 1 or 2. And because I follow, and another thing we can do is we can follow their school Twitter handles or whatever it is, because you have an idea as to what they're teaching the children. So following their Twitter, I found out that they were talking about, different families, like two mothers. And I felt, okay, they told my son in year 1 or 2 then. And he came home, and because I had known they had told him that at school, I asked him about it. I said, what exactly did they tell you about, this? Because I want to be there. This was something I hadn't discussed with him before, because I never thought he would come that early. And this is a Church of England school, but because they are funded by the public or by the government, they have to go along with whatever the government supports. Mm-hmm. So they started teaching these children that, it's okay and whatever. So when I spoke with him, I said, look, it is not okay. You don't go around and tell your friends that their moms, that they have 2 moms, or 2 dads. I mean, like in homosexual relationships. I said, you don't go and tell them you are in a bad family or whatever, but you need to know. This is because my son can understand, or he could understand at that age what I meant. You need to know you're different, and this is what God says. But you love them. And when the time is right, they will be able to understand. Or when you're old enough, you'll be able to share these things with them and let them also know that it's wrong. But you can't judge, you can't tell your fellow, classmates that his parents or his family or whatever is wrong, because that's another problem. They could actually come back to you if word gets to the school, and then your child or you would also get into some kind of trouble. So we need to be very careful. But then I found out that my daughter in nursery was also being told the same thing. They shared a book with her. He either has 2 moms. I was livid. I said, look, you're telling a boy in maybe year 1, he's about 6 or so or 7. And then you're telling a child who is barely 3, who is just about 3, you're telling her the same thing. So these things are real. Please, let's be there to educate our children early enough, because whatever they hear from us, they tend, to take if they've heard it from us first. But believe me, if your child has heard it from the teacher first, they believe the teacher more than parents a lot of the time. So let's be quick to preempt what our children need to know ahead of time. Then the second thing is this issue of Halloween, also a Western world culture. We don't celebrate Halloween in our house. There was a year or probably a couple of years that I made that mistake. I just felt, they'll feel awkward. Their friends are doing it. They want to go trick or treating and all of that. But what exactly is the foundation of this Halloween? I sat my son down, as young as he was one day. In fact, there was one year I was working, and my colleagues at the office were saying, what's your Halloween plan? What's your Halloween plan? In fact, one of them brought a dress for me. It was the bride of Satan. She brought it and said, since I didn't get anything, for my daughter. I accepted it. No, I'm being honest, because then I wasn't even I was afraid of being seen as odd. So I took the dress. It was a bit too big for her. I took it home. I tried it on her to tell you how subtly these things can seep into our system. And that year, what I did was I said, okay, they're not going trick or treating, but maybe they would have like treasure hunts at home. I hid sweets in different. At the end of the day, after that year, I felt really guilty inside me. And after that, I called my kids and I said, look, we're not celebrating Halloween. We don't. We're Christians. We don't celebrate it. It's not a Christian festival. When it's Easter, we'll do Easter egg hunt. When it's Christmas, we'll do Christmas, whatever. But for this, we're not going to do it. So those are 2 subtle things that I know creep into our homes. You understand? A lot of us are, careful. We've got like parental control on our TVs. We've got all of that, but we also need to be careful what our children learn. Let them hear from us first, so that when they get to school, they are strengthened. They know my son actually feels, I know better than them. I know this is not right. So he comes back and says, this person doesn't even know that this isn't right, with this cocky attitude. But then it's good that he knows that this is what is right and that you are not allowed it because you're different. So that's all I just wanted to say. Let's be careful. Let them hear from us first. And let's, just be very, very careful about the subtle things that we allow, even as Christians, because we don't want to feel uncomfortable in this funny environment that some of us are still living in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing, Lyle. Thank you. I think the second hand that went up was Ibe's hand, followed by Christiana, followed by my Auntie Shola. So in that order. Ibis, you might speak first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Once again, thank you, Dr. Adigwe, for your talk. Most times when people give talks, I want to say thank you. We always say, this was very enlightening. And sometimes we don't mean it, but this one I actually really, really do mean it. Thank you very much. My question really is about this issue of having underage children coming to our houses as house helps. especially when they are at the same age with our own children. For me, I don't think that's right, but like you said, it's personal. I wouldn't want to bring an underage person that is the same age with, for example, you bring in a 12-year-old child to be a house help, and you have a 12-year-old or 10-year-old child. I don't know what your child is doing, why he can't do the housework, and you're bringing in a housework of 12 at the same age. But my own question really is, but I've seen these things happen, and I'm always very. But my own question is there no, is it not an emotional abuse? For example, where you bring in a child into your house, and then you send your children to the Coronas and the British Lekki international schools and the big schools, and then you send the other house help that stays in the same house to a public school. I don't know, do you see that as, is there a way, does it not, how do I ask you, does it not affect that child house help emotionally? I don't know, I feel from my own very layman perspective, I feel if I was in that child's shoes, regardless of whether you are helping or not, I feel it will give me a sense of inferiority. Well, I've seen it happen, and everybody around seems to think that what is wrong with it? Why should the child? Is his child now? He can send it to Corona, I agree. And why should he send another person's child? Is he not helping? But in my mind, I'm like, you are bringing that child into a situation where the person may feel very inferior, and that thing can stay with that child for a very long time. So my question really is, does it not have an emotional or psychological effect on that child that is brought into an environment and everybody in the same house is taking, I'm talking about where they are the same age, they're taking to a kind of upper class lifestyle, and then you are like the Omodo. So because of that, you should be grateful that we are even housing you. Does that not have a psychological effect on the child? So that's really my question.
All right, thank you very much. I think first and foremost, I'll need to clarify again why I brought that example. I brought that example up to show how there is potentially abuse in many African homes. So it was more an example to show that we shouldn't think that abuse is far away from us. A lot of people might actually be practicing that unconsciously because of our culture, our society, the prevalent poverty. And it looks like we're helping, but then we get underage children and we don't treat them well. So actually, that was where I was coming from. I was by no means trying to advocate, bring them in and take them to a public school. Not at all, no. So if I hadn't made myself clear, I'll probably be clearer and say it's something I'd rather not do myself. So we're on the same page. What I'm saying is that there are some things that in our society might not be able to, you might not be able to easily eradicate them. They're there. That's the elephant in the room. We're talking about it. A lot of homes have these things. So how do you ensure that you don't abuse this child because many times you're not the one, it's not only you that's going to get the child. The parents are giving that child out because they want 30K a month. They are the ones rushing you for the child, and a lot of people are bringing them from wherever, different parts of the country, to people who can pay, a stipend, but which means a lot to the families. So these are societal issues that we might not be able to solve, just by our discussions here. There are things that are deeply woven into the fabric of our poverty-stricken society. However, I'm just saying that if it happens, to the best of your ability, treat that child right. The semantic, the details of where you send the child to or not, if you're very rich and you can send your child to Corona, I'm not in any way advising where you should send the child to. But I know that if you're that rich and you can send your child to a posh school, you definitely probably can do better than a public school. So, but it's up to them. I'm not doing it. The whole purpose of the talk was really not that. I actually brought that example to show that is one way children are easily abused. Do you get what I mean? So, to be honest, it's better if that scenario is not even there. But in our society, I can tell you that many parents are grateful for that opportunity, whether it's right or wrong, and will still send their children for these things. And whatever you give those parents, even if it's that 30K, that 30K to those parents means probably more than what $1 million will mean to the employer, who might be that rich. Do you get what I mean? So it really depends on, many things. That's not the purpose of this. It is just make sure that if a child is in your care for this reason, and you have reasoned it out that so let it be that somebody will be here, treat that person as a child, not as a maid, because the person is too young. However you want to spend your money on that child, just be righteous about it. If you're righteous, it's not a matter of whether it's corona or not. The Lord will teach you what to do with the child, but take care of the child, that at the end of the day, that child knows that, or everybody can see that this child is well taken care of. In the first place, sending the child to your house is already a form of, putting that child, on the lower rung of the ladder emotionally anyway. It's already an anomaly. It's not something you probably can correct just by sending the child to the same school as your children. It's a scenario that should not happen in a proper society. So I think that's where I will leave that, if you understand, what I'm saying.
Thank you very much. I think you've done justice to that. I'll let Dr. Fatola give her comments and Dr. Ephraim next. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Amanda, well done. Very insightful, very practical discussions. And thank you for sharing your part of your parenting journey and how you've handled certain situations. Now, thanks for bringing this up, and it just made me remember a few things. Can you still hear me?
Lola, your volume has gone low from my end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just give me a minute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
it's better now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. A call came. So, in addition to what Layo has said about we living in the Western world, and I just want to say it's not only in schools. I remember taking my kids to the library, and one of the books my 4-year-old picked up was Jane Has Two Mummies. And I just thought that was an opportunity to talk about it, because I think the good thing is that there are always opportunities to talk about this thing. And once you get that opportunity, just grab it. Don't defer that opportunity. Talk about it. Sometimes you feel they don't understand. And it's just a simple prayer to God. God, please help me to be able to pass the information. And whether you like it or not, you may say so many things, but one thing will stick with the child. And that was my opportunity of telling them about homosexuality. And I remembered we came home to watch the Bible story about Sodom and Gomorrah. And that was when we tackled it. Until date, I made my children realize that we have a manual. We all have a manual in this house and as Christians. And so if you're correcting them about simple things as even anger, my son will be asking you, is it in the manual? And yes, I go to the Bible and I open it. It's a manual. And what does a manual do? That's what I ask them. We buy toys at home. We have a manual in it. What does the manual do? The manual gives us direction. It gives us steps to step. I mean, it teaches us step by step how we can fix this toy, how we can do this, how we can do that. And as Christians, that's the manual we have. And secondly, another thing is the good thing about Western schooling in the Western world for children is books. They give them lots of books to read and to bring home. Please, by all means, from one class to the other, they know me. If I believe in something, I stand by it, and I don't mind what the teachers feel or think. They've brought books home and I return them. I will go basically myself to tell the teacher, I'm sorry, my child cannot read this book. What will my 4-year-old, 5, 6-year-old be learning about Book of Witches? Books with, and the good thing is that at the back of each book, they would have written things about the review. So you can see scary cats, monster, blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, initially, I wasn't tough about it. I knew what I wanted, but I didn't want to tell the child a no without making sure that the child understood what I was saying. So the good thing was, the first time one of the books were brought home, he slept and he had a nightmare. And I said, you didn't just have this nightmare. The nightmare is because of the gory story and the gory book that you read. And it was like, oh, because that's the age in which they have their own imagination. So even if you stop them at home, when they go to school and the books, they are not bringing it home, they will actually tell the teacher, I want to read it because I want to read it. And the teacher will say, okay, that's okay, you can have a read. Now, after that, about 2 or 3 episodes reoccurred, reading those books and having nightmares. And I think that was just the opportunity of sitting down and talking about it. And that all these books, they don't teach you anything, they only give nightmares. And following that, I went to the teacher to say, there are some books that they are not allowed because of nightmares and because I don't believe in it, because they're not teaching them anything. They tried talking to me about it and I wasn't having it. They are my children. If anything happens to them, I'm going to be affected more than you. Fine, I'm polite about it, but I'm very assertive when it comes to school, the discipline they offer my children and the ones I offer my children at home. So again, I think the teacher tried to test the water again, bringing that book home, another book in which I've already given you categories of books that my children are not allowed to read. And I had to go back to school and returned them. And the next time my child wanted to read one in school, which is one of the books that they're not allowed to bring home, now came to me and said, I picked up a book and Miss said, I can't read this book because it's not allowed. Yes, and that's what I wanted. So like Elias said, I know sometimes we feel a little bit intimidated and sometimes we want to conform and sometimes we don't want to get into any problems with the school. But please, whatever you believe, be assertive about it. You have to be polite, but let them know what you stand for. Let them know what your discipline stands for. And you will be surprised that even the teachers will conform and respect that decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Auntie Shola, please, you may speak now. Thank you. Hello, Auntie Shola, you can speak now.
Hello? Okay, thank you. Right, the last speaker actually said most of what I wanted to say because I wanted to talk about books. So what I would just add is even books we buy ourselves. I had an experience recently. There was a magazine they sent home from the school where we can order books. It's a book club magazine. And there was one of the books that said kids that dare to be different. You know, you would think from such a topic, kids that dare to be different, you would think it would be a motivational book for children, you know, but do you know what it was about? It was about kids that dare to be gay. Fortunately, because of the fact that my daughter knows the biblical view of such things, she was quick to say, hey, look at these stories. And this was a collection of several stories, maybe 50, 60 stories. And each one talking about, you know, maybe the first gay athlete, the first gay this and that. So it's very important for us to, even when you pick up books from the shelf, please don't be carried away by innocuous book titles. Cross-check whatever you're giving your children to read. And I cannot, you know, echo enough the speaker when she says, start early, start early, start early. Once your children know these things when they're young, by the time they're older, if they come across it, they themselves will be the ones who will come and tell you, hey, there's something odd here, because they have become sensitized to such things. So we need to sensitize our children. Finally, I just want to throw this in because there was this little talk. Dr. Yemisi, you did very well. Let me just say that it's against the law in Nigeria now to employ children below 18. It's against the law. So anybody who is even employing anybody below 18 is taking a risk. Now, if it's family members or somebody like that, and you brought them from home to look after them, then please make sure you're legally protected by having an agreement with the parents, signed or thumb printed by them. It's not, I join her absolutely in saying it's not ideal. Personally, I don't do it. I don't employ people below 18 years of age. It's not necessary, it's not appropriate. But supposing a relative from the village says, please take this, my child, and educate the child, then have an agreement. Finally, I want to say that sometimes not all these stories are that negative. Recently, I was very glad when a young lady was telling me in church, she got admission to study law in the university. This is a girl that was brought, her father used to be the security man to these friends of ours in the village. And once when they went for Christmas, she was crying and she said she wanted to go to Abuja with them. So that was how she ended up with them. So she wasn't really a maid, but she was very helpful around the house. But they sent her to school. And yes, it was a public school. But she went to that public school wearing socks and carrying her backpack and so on. She looked, she was not a maltreated child. You see, sometimes Yorubas have a saying that even out of the black pot can come out the white pan. Even from going to public school, that girl passed WAEC, that girl passed JAM, that girl has gotten admission to study law. Now, what if they didn't bring her that Christmas? What if they said, just stay in the village? Maybe she would have, but I suppose the public school in a good neighborhood in Abuja was probably better than public school in the village where she would have been. So I think that the answer lies in a statement that Dr. Yemisi made: be righteous, be righteous. If your conscience does not condemn you, then you're doing the right thing. If your conscience condemns you, then you are doing the wrong thing, and you should not encourage or continue it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Auntie Shola. For those that don't know, Dr. Olushola Ephraim Oluwanuga was one of our speakers. She's a great psychiatrist, and we are happy to have her views on this subject. So some of what she said, don't judge a book by its cover. And even in the midst of this poverty-stricken and all of that, sometimes we still have some very heartwarming stories. And for those trying to give public schools a bad name, I went to a public school. I went to Queen's School in Ibadan for 5 years, and it's a public school. And I believe I'm very well spoken. Thank you. Yeah, but I know public schools then and now are not quite the same. But yes, there's still some very good public schools. Professor Ayedu, I think you raised your hand. You can speak now. Thank you.
I think it's Mommy Ayedu.
Okay, Mommy Ayedu. Now you're always together. Okay, yeah, you can speak, Mom.
Thank you very much. Dr. Yemisi, thank you for doing justice to this topic.
Thank you.
I want to thank my sister too, Dr. Shola Oluwanuga. I want to thank Layo and all those who have contributed to this wonderful topic today.
Yeah.
It has really been a blessing, and especially all the things that has been coming from our young mothers. One thing I just want to add to it was the fact that as a parent, you must let your children know your values right from when they are young and begin to teach them. When they know your values, even you as a parent, if you are doing the wrong thing, they will tell you. And this is one of the things that I've experienced with my own children. Right from when they are young, I let them know my values and what I want, what I expect from them, and I teach them from the Word of God. Fortunately, my first daughter used to like to read, so we used to buy a lot of books for her, and she can already read. She can read and write before I had my second child. So when I had my second child, she was always reading to her. And that goes on, they're always reading because I like reading. And the books we used to buy for them in those days are you know, some of these ladybirds that are tending to Christian values. So they start knowing what is right and what is wrong. Even from the books they are reading, from what we are teaching them daily, from our personal devotion at home. But one thing I want to say is that it doesn't have to, you don't have to be an extra, you know, a super parent. Just be yourself and teach your children the right thing. And when they go out, because of what you have taught them at home, it's what you give them that is more important. We need to realize that it's what you give to your children that is more important than what they give them outside. Once they grasp what you give them and they're used to it and they believe in it, it will be very difficult for an outsider to convince them in doing the wrong thing. That's number one. Another aspect is that for me, as a parent, it's something that is already inbuilt in me, and my children are already aware of it. There is no child that can come to my house that I will not say, your leg has touched this house, you will read. Unless they don't want to read. They have brought somebody for me to employ at one time. And I look at her, I said, you're a teenager, you're supposed to be in school. And I got in touch with the parents. And the parents said, she said she doesn't want to go to school. And I talked to her and I convinced her that I will send her to school. I took her to, and after a while, she said she will go to school. I took her to the school and did everything that is necessary. It's not the first time, it's not the second time. My children knows we are used to that in our homes. We used to train a lot of children that we don't even know anything about them. Some of them are good, some of them, but just know that you have done your best for them and they have given them what is more valuable for them. So we normally don't treat anybody that come into our life anyhow. We want to treat them the same way. We want them to eat what we are eating. And because of that, my children too are used to that aspect, that even peradventure one, maybe you just have something and you didn't give them, and they say, no, you have not given this so and so, they too must taste it. Why? Because they feel, we normally feel that when you allow them to take what you are taking, they will not have cause to say they want to steal. You know, but when you begin to deny them what saying they can take this, they cannot take what your children are taking. That is not godly enough, and you are not being righteous in what you are doing. So in that area, I want to implore young mothers to try and to practice equality whenever it is convenient for them, even if it is not convenient. Just try your best, because it goes a long way and it helps in stabilizing those children that are not even yours. Another aspect I want to say is that because a child is going to, thank God Temi has said it, it came to my mind. I always tell my children, some other people, that my children went to public school and they did well because I monitor them. I monitor everything that they are doing. And they even those who went to those private schools, some of them cannot stand. some of my children that we trained. So even right now as I'm talking, I still have one that when he was brought to me, you can just class him as like somebody who is in primary school. And it's supposed to be in DS2 from the village where I came from. But fortunately at that time there was a strike. And I told him, I said, you are too old to go back to primary school. But I'm going to coach you at home so that you'll be able to get back to JS2, even though he's supposed to go to JS3. I said, I will coach you to the extent that you can cope with JS3. So during those holidays, I started coaching him. Somebody that cannot even say a single sentence in English. I started coaching him, but not ordinarily just like with my own strength, but with prayers as well. Praying for him, speaking good things to him. And before you know it, he picked up. So by the time I took him to school, and I told them that I want him to be in DS2. And they tested him. They said, we can even put him in DS3 because he has really picked up. And unfortunately, they have sent the names of the DS3 students that time. So, and that's how he started the DS2. And since then, he has been doing well. And I still monitor them. Anytime, anywhere, I know where they can gain, whether in lesson or in coaching, I will send them there so that they can improve themselves. There are two. One of them is in the university right now. The second, this one I'm talking about now, is doing his WAEC. So anybody that God has sent our way, we should know it's for a purpose. Because in this life, we don't even know who we do it. Your children may not even be there. So whatever anyone that God has brought across to you, just make sure you do your best for such a child. And I believe, as I'm rounding up right now, and I will repeat what I've just said. The best value that you can teach your children is what you have given them yourself, because you are the letter that they will read. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mommy Ayedo.
Hello?
Thank you very much, Mommy Ayedo. Thank you. We really appreciate your comments. I know you are praising the young mothers. The young mothers are standing on the shoulders of the older mothers. We thank you for the
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yes, she's referring to my two adopted brothers who are great gentlemen, and have done very well, done us proud, such caring and great young men. I'm very, very proud of them. As she said, there are so many people that have passed through our house, and some of them were just, in summary, an apology. But then you stumble on two children that really just turn out so well, as in they're just a success story, and you just know that they are God sent. When you know children are God sent to you, those are the kind of children they are. And those are the kind of children we pray to have when you know that your children are gifts. But of course, you can hear a lot about being intentional with monitoring children. Very, very important, because as Dr. Yemisi has said, even in the best of circumstances, children are vulnerable and need to be monitored. So I think we've had a great time on this session today. It's been amazing. Thank you, everyone, for those of you who have joined us from the beginning of the sessions till now, sacrificing your Saturday afternoon and contributing, asking questions. Thank you to all our speakers, especially those that are here and those that are not here. You are so well appreciated. God bless you. Our children are so important. Let us not keep quiet when we need to be speaking. I pray we all have eyes that see and ears that hear and hearts that understand so that we can do our best for our children. Thank you very much to our guest speaker today. She's done an amazing job. I don't know how she found time within her busy schedule to put all of that together, but it's been a great, great job, great presentation. Thank you so much. And so with that, I'm hoping we filled the feedback forms on the chat, and you've also filled the form to join the group. If you filled it, I would add you to the group before the end of today by God's grace. And please fill the feedback form to give us some feedback about how the sessions have been for you. The summary of today is that everybody has a responsibility to the children. It's not one person's responsibility. It is all of our responsibility. I know some assertions have been made about people that might be like house helps, teachers, lesson. Sometimes it can be clergy. It can be spiritual people. It can be people that are unexpected. It can even be a parent of a child. Don't say, it's their child now, what's my business? It is your business. Everybody's child is your business. She's mentioned something about bordering on being nosy. It is that nosiness that has saved some children from an untimely death and from further destruction of their mental and emotional health. So if you need to be nosy to save a life, please be, by all means, be intentionally nosy. If you need to be, please. I know we do a lot of prayers where we come from, but sometimes we need to put a bit more action behind our words. So God will help us to do all that we can. We will not be guilty about our children or about any other children in our care by the special grace of God. I'll just take final words from Dr. Adigwe now, after which we would say our motto for this series. Thank you. Dr. Adigwe, over to you.
All right, thank you very much for having me. Apart from what I have shared, I have learned a lot from the robust discussion by everybody. And I think for me, the take home would be, I think it was a topic of one of the themes of this whole series. Intentional parenting is very important to safeguard your children. So being intentional about it, knowing that there are dangers, being intentional about trying to prevent your children being exposed to those dangers, being intentional about speaking out when you feel that a line has been breached, being intentional about yourself building up your children in terms of knowledge, in terms of their psyche, their emotions, their mental health, to further equip them, for the dangers ahead. Talking about the fact that, our responsibilities are not just for our biological children. Every child in our care should be a better person for having passed through us. We are also custodians of their safety. We're also custodians of their mental health, their emotional, psychological, and every other aspect of their lives, as long as they're in our care. So I think that we should go with that strong sense of responsibility to everyone that God has brought our way, whether they are children or they are, our students or pupils, or whether, they're even our congregation, whatever it is, and I trust that God will help us by God's grace. All the contributions have been very on point. There's so many mothers who are intentional about their parenting and who are outspoken about what they want. I think that's really important. Empower your children. Let them know what you stand for. Yes, as Mommy Adrian has said, and empower them to stand for it. The issue of this wave rocking the world now, I had to sit my daughter down, the one in secondary school, and talk to her that if somebody approaches you, because there are traps now, they say, what do you think about this? I had to carve out a response for her that will not compromise our faith. And at the same time, you cannot question it. And so what she says is, I don't believe it. I don't believe in it. It's against my faith. I'm absolutely happy for anyone to believe what they want. And when she's speaking with her friends, she's able to say, the same way you believe in it is the same way I believe in my faith and what my faith says. So I think that another thing is equipping them for the stumbling blocks ahead, especially in this kind of, society now, where there are things that, they have to respond to. And if they don't have the right response, they might get swept. Like, I really appreciate Lyo's example of how, if you're not careful, even as a parent, you can get swept, but trying to fortify them, in the best way you can. And then in the end, we just pray and ask God to help us and help them, because you can't fight every battle for them, but the ones we can do, we will do by God's grace.
Amen. Those are wonderful final words. The battle we can fight, we will fight. The ones we cannot fight, we will leave it to God and the angels to continue on our behalf. Thank you very much. I think from one of my own final words would be that one of the most important things that we would need to teach our children is the ability to say no. I think even adults find it difficult to say no sometimes. And it's one thing that is so important as it comes to playing like almost every aspect of life. You're going to have to say no to some things, especially in the world that we live in, or to stand up for what you believe in. Now, I'd just like to end with a heartwarming story about a woman that my mom told me this story, but I've never forgotten that since then. Anyway, she passed and there was nobody to bury her. They were going to give her a public funeral. She had happened to have taken care of her children, but for some reason they had abandoned her in old age and they were all living outside the country. Then she died and nobody came to claim her. And then suddenly somebody said, is this not the woman that fought for the nurses when she used to work in this hospital? I think it was UCH. I said, yes, she's the one. And, so many, many years had passed. She was old and they remembered her and the work she had done. And suddenly people started rising up. The person that was going to buy the casket, the people that were going to do the program, the people that were going to do the food. And what would have seemed like a funeral, like an unplanned funeral in an unmarked grave, turned out to be one that was full of great honor. So the funeral, the nurses were lined up honoring her as her casket was passing by. But she was buried in great pomp and great glory without her children present. So it just made me think that, some people think, oh, it's my children that will bury me, things like that. And they're doing everything for their children. And you sometimes hear some very wise parents say that, no, they cannot have a house help that is wise and their children that are foolish. So all of you have to be learning how to do things together in the house and how to make yourself better and smart. So don't think that is only what you invest in your children that is coming back to you. Whatever you do, keep sowing good seeds, keep doing the right thing, and your reward is coming. It's all part of making us better as humans and making the world a better place. Charity begins at home, and God is going to help all of us. The Find the Link Parenting series has been really, really great and a great learning curve and experience for me. And I hope it has been for so many people. God bless us all.